Hello, once again, Kenny Jacobs from Bloomington, Illinois. Going to do a video today talking about current events as it relates to Bible prophecy. And first of all, I want to say thank you to, I've had quite a few new subscribers in the last few weeks, so I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and welcome the new subscribers. And feel free to leave any comments in the comments section on any of the videos and any questions you may have. But look forward to sharing God's Word and the current events as they relate to Bible prophecy with you as we go forward. And also my video schedule is a little bit off this week with the holidays and having some more time with my family. So I will continue to do videos throughout the week. They just might be, I might miss a day or two in there somewhere. Definitely, if anything big happens, there'll always be a video done for sure. And with that, I've got, I didn't do one yesterday as a matter of fact, so now I've got a lot of news stories to catch up on. So I need to get right into this. There's about 12 news stories that I actually want to touch on today. Signs of the times we're living in, things are moving really fast, there's a lot going on. So this first story I want to talk about today is out of host.madison.com, and the headline is Trudy Rabin, Israel faces a big election. It says, while Arab countries are struggling to redefine themselves amid violence, Israel is poised to wrestle with its own identity crisis at the polls. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to call an early election in March has precipitated a most unusual election season, with stark implications not only for Israelis, but also for the Middle East and the United States. Under Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister since his first, David Ben-Gurion, this basically centrist country has drifted steadily rightward. The Israeli settler movement has become a driving force within Netanyahu's Likud party, pushing for outright annexation of much of the West Bank. Likud members of parliament and even a cabinet minister have openly called for a Jewish third temple to be built on top of the ancient Temple Mount in Jerusalem's Old City, which is holy to both Muslims and Jews. Even though key rabbis oppose a move that would threaten to transform the Israeli-Palestine conflict from a territorial struggle into a religious war. It says, meanwhile, Israel has been convulsed by a right-wing push for a new law that would define Israel as a Jewish state in a way that could further marginalize the 20% of its citizens who are Arabs. All of this has soured relationships with European leaders and President Barack Obama. And I'm going to stop reading this article there and post it into the description box with the rest of the article so you can check them out yourself. But I just want to touch on a few things on this article. One, it references the soured relationships between Israel and the European Union and the United States, and that's a big development because the European Union and the United States have been allies to Israel, but we're in the last days, and like Zechariah chapter 12 talks about, all the roads are going to turn against Israel, and that's what we're seeing happen right now. But here again, another article talking about calling for a third temple. They've been working on the peace agreement now for the last few years. It fell apart during the summer, but it will not go away. I've got more stories about that today. The covenant with many of Daniel 9:27 is going to happen. The Bible makes that clear, and that's how the final 7-year period of time begins. And we are, I think, right on top of the time of that happening. I will not be surprised to see that covenant be confirmed sometime in 2015. But the thing is, that Israel, is got these elections going on. There's going to be a new government in place, and it's very, very interesting because that new government might certainly make it easier for some of these things like the Third Temple and the peace agreement to happen. I don't believe it's going to bring peace. In fact, I tell you every day it won't bring peace. But the peace agreement is going to be signed. And it's interesting, this article referencing a big election and new identity for Israel, because I want to remind everybody, Romans chapter 13 verse 1 says, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained by God. Well, again, we're right at the stage where I think God is about to turn his attention back to Israel for Daniel's 70th week, or the time of Jacob's trouble. The fullness of the Gentiles are about to come in. The final 7-year period of time is about to start. And there's a new government coming that will be ordained of God for his purposes, for his plan. And the elections are in March, so it's coming up soon. So this is a very important news story, and I will keep you guys informed as the election information comes out in more detail. But wow, again, just interesting times that we're living in. Now I want to go to another news story. Turkey, again, is a NATO member. Has been always thought of as a pretty moderate Arab or a Muslim nation, but they're turning toward Israel too, and forming an alliance with Russia and with Iran, which lines up with Ezekiel 38. And here's a very interesting article out of the Times of Israel today. Mashal in Turkey. We hope to liberate Palestine with you. Very interesting. Remember, whenever they talk about liberating Palestine, what that's code word means, it's code for annihilate Israel. So that the land of Israel becomes the land of Palestine. Okay, so it says, in address to ruling party, Hamas leader praises Erdogan. Crowd shouts, down with Israel. Again, they don't want peace with Israel. They do not want to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. They don't even want Israel to exist. But here we go. Hamas is in Turkey. The Hamas leader says, on a surprise visit to Turkey Saturday, Hamas leader Khalid Mashal hailed the country's leaders and said he hoped to liberate Palestine and Jerusalem with them. During a speech to officials and supporters of the ruling Justice and Development Party, Mashal congratulated the people of Turkey for having might be a typo. Congratulated the people of Turkey for having for having President Erdogan as head of state, adding that a strong Turkey means a strong Palestine. God is with us and with you on the road to victory. We will liberate Palestine and Jerusalem again in the future, Mashal said. The Hamas leader was introduced to the crowd gathered in the conservative Konya province for the annual event. His speech was frequently interrupted by supporters shouting, down with Israel and God is great. A democratic, stable, and developed Turkey is a source of power for all Muslims, Mashal went on, adding that I greet all the brave people who claim Jerusalem. Our flag is a symbol of all the oppressed in the world. God is witness. We will make this red flag a symbol of the innocent. This red flag will fly side by side with the flags of Palestine, free Syria, and all other innocents. Flags anywhere in the world, he told the Congress. Turkey and Hamas have seen a rapid rapprochement as Israel's ties with Ankara continue to deteriorate. The AK party has had close ties with Hamas since its rise in 2001. The two have been known for their frequent outbursts against Israel over the years. Again, I'll put this in the description box. You can check it out. But Turkey is going to be a major player in the final 7-year period of time. Again, they are mentioned in Ezekiel 38 as well, in the battle of Gog and Magog, and they are turning more and more against Israel, and of course Hamas, the terrorist group from Gaza, is courting them and saying that they want to liberate Palestine together. Just more wars and rumors of wars here in the Middle East. Very, very interesting. Let's move on. There's a lot to cover. There's another move about the Palestinian statehood bid. Title, this is out of Times of Israel today. An unstoppable avalanche toward Palestinian statehood. The Palestinians can't have a state and still claim they're under occupation, says one Israeli scholar. The international community seems to disagree. This is again a really long article. I just want to kind of highlight bits and pieces of this one. It says the avalanche of European resolutions calling for the recognition of a Palestinian state is entirely symbolic and therefore meaningless, Israeli officials often argue. Palestinian statehood, they say, will only come about when the two sides sit together, negotiate, and come to an agreement. And yet, the large number of parliaments that have voted in favor of recognition, including Britain, France, Spain, Ireland, Belgium, Portugal, Luxembourg, and the European Union, is more than just a symbolic gesture. While Europe cannot create a state where there is none, it could be argued that the mere fact that more and more countries want to recognize Palestine accords this entity a certain status approaching statehood. The former chief Palestinian negotiator, Saeb Erekat, said Friday that the Palestinians will submit their UN Security Council statehood resolution to a vote by Monday at the latest. However, it fears the snowball of international recognition for Palestine is gathering pace. And it talks about a couple different methods for statehood or views of statehood. It says, one, the constitutive view of statehood. It says, according to one school of thought in international law, an entity becomes a state not only when it fulfills its objective criteria of statehood, but also when it is recognized by a critical mass of other states. The so-called constitutive theory postulates that the act of recognition itself actually creates the state based on the common definition. And that's kind of what it looks like Palestine is trying to hope for in short term. And that seems to be what's happening with the international community right now. Let me scroll down to the next way of doing it. The next way is the declarative way, it says. And I wanted to find a certain sentence in there because it corresponds to Isaiah chapter 66. But the second way is called the declarative view, and it says some scholars argue that the constitutive theory has long lost out to the declarative theory of statehood, and for the declarative statehood to happen, it says that under international law, the state needs to possess the following qualifications: a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and a capacity to enter into relations with other nations, with other states. Article 3 states that the political existence of the state is independent of recognition by the other states, which leads some to argue that the fact that many other states have moved to recognize Palestine doesn't necessarily mean it's really a state, since it doesn't fulfill the 4 criteria. But then it says they want the best of both worlds. It says, but things aren't always black and white in statehood theory. It's a process. There is not always an exact moment in time when an entity becomes a state. Regarding Palestine, we're currently in the middle, he assessed. But I wanted to go to Isaiah 66:1, because this is how Israel became a nation in one day, immediately. It wasn't an over time process, and it fulfilled Bible prophecy. Isaiah 66:8 says, who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day, or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Israel became a nation in May 14th, 1948. And now the Palestinians are trying to become a state as well, and it's getting very, very interesting because it's all tying into Bible prophecy. If the article ends with international recognition, it says in January 2015, more European parliaments will vote on the recognition of a Palestinian state. Finland, Italy, Belgium, Slovenia, have already scheduled votes. Other states are sure to follow. 13 European states and 10 Central and Eastern European states already formally recognize Palestine, and countless countries in the rest of the world. In addition, the Palestinians are planning in the next days to take their statehood bid to the UN Security Council. It says here will likely be vetoed by the United States. Jerusalem's response to all these processes is that all unilateral recognitions in the world won't change anything on the ground, but that actual Palestinian independence will only come about as a result of negotiations with Israel. That may be so, but meanwhile it seems as if the world has decided not to wait for that day and start by bestowing formal statehood upon Palestine. And that's exactly what's happening. And even though this article says that the U.S. is likely to veto the UN recognition, it's not a guarantee because of all of the pressure put on us by the international community to back it up. Without a doubt, though, even if the United States vetoes that, they will continue to push Israel into a two-state solution. Zechariah chapter 12, verse 9. Well, let's just read verse 2 and 3 as well. Verse 2, Zechariah 12:2. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling round about unto all the people when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now, with the international community gathering together against Israel to divide the land and give up their land. And verse 9, Zechariah 12:9 says, And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And that's God will make good on that word, and it's not going to be good for any nation involved in forcing Israel to give up their land. Alright, let's go to another news story. I'm going to skip over this one because I already covered it anyway. This is an article, Arakat on UN vote, Palestinian bid by Monday. Well, actually, you know what? There may have been something in there I didn't want to cover. Let me go to that real quick. This is out of the Times of Israel. I will skip that. I'm going to go because I'm going to find a different article. It's going to talk about the Arab initiative. So let's go on. There's still a lot of articles to cover today. Here's an article about Iran. This is out of the Rutsheva today. Iran unveils its new suicide drones. Basically, we're going to have kamikaze drones, it looks like. Israel tests out a new weapon meant to bring death from the skies on land, air, and sea targets as part of a massive 6-day drill. And again, this is a nation that claims they're working on their nuclear program for peaceful purposes only, yet they're committed to the annihilation of Israel. And now they're testing these suicide drones. It says the Iranian military, as part of its massive ongoing 6-day military drill that began last Thursday, held tests on Saturday, unveiling a new weapon for their arsenal: suicide drones. During the drill, Iran's Air Force demonstrated the domestically produced exploding drone meant to strike targets on land, air, and sea. The massive drill being conducted by the Iranians has been termed Mohammed, the Delegate of God, and includes ground forces as well as air and naval forces. It also includes tests of Iranian ballistic missiles. Iran has shown a major push in recent years to develop its military capabilities, and in particular its navy, missile systems, drones, and cyber warfare abilities. It has likewise threatened Israel with annihilation while developing a nuclear program capable of producing nuclear weapons. Very interesting. Keep in mind that the Iran's Shiite Muslim theology, their end-time eschatology, requires them to get the world at war and in chaos so that their Mahdi can come back. And it's amazing the striking resemblance between what they are looking for with their Mahdi and the Christians are looking for as far as the rise of the Antichrist. And they're working, it's amazing how similar that is, how parallel that is. And because Iran feels that they have to be in war and conflict and global chaos for him to come, it only stands to reason that they're going to continue to push toward war with Israel. And they do not, like I said, have any peaceful means in mind when it comes to their nuclear program or any other weapons for that matter. Let's move on. There's more to cover. I mentioned Turkey earlier. I'm going to touch on this article real quick. Erdogan to Europe. Don't criticize us. Fight Islamophobia. Now, this so-called Islamophobia thing is, again, a very important concept because the so-called moderate Arab nations are now trying to say, along with the United States and the European Union, are saying we need to come together and fight radical Islam, the terrorism, the groups like ISIS, and stamp that out so we can live at peace. And that's somehow going to tie in, no doubt, to two things. One, the two-state solution, the covenant with many of Daniel 9:27, as well as the one-world religion that Pope Francis is working very hard, along with the Muslims and the Hindus and the Sikhs and hate to say it, even evangelical Christians are all pulling together for the one-world religion, again, to try to end all these so-called religious wars and the jihad movement. So, Turkish President Erdogan slams European countries for criticizing deteriorating press freedom in Turkey. Just touch on this real quick. He slammed European countries for criticizing deteriorating press freedom in Turkey, saying that they should instead try to find a solution for the increasing Islamophobia in Europe. The European Union, which Turkey has been seeking to join for decades, said the media raids ran counter to European values, a criticism already dismissed by Erdogan. On Friday, the president repeated his discontent with a visibly harsher tone. We are not Europe's scapegoat. We are definitely not a country that Europe can point its finger at and scold. Instead of criticizing us, Europe should find a solution to increasing racism and Islamophobia. And the European Union had criticized Turkey for oppression and for not allowing free access to sites on the internet like YouTube and things like that. Look for more and more restrictions all over the world on things like YouTube and trying to do things like I'm doing right now, sounding the alarm, spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, and telling you how what's going on in different governments around the world right now are leading us to the return of Jesus. That's going to be illegal before long. The Antichrist certainly is not going to allow that. Let's move on. Here's a story out of Prophecy News Watch. Let me get to it here. U.S. families prepare for modern-day apocalypse. Now, this isn't just necessarily Christian, Bible prophecy believing people like myself. This is just secular people preparing for a modern-day apocalypse in the United States. It says, from the outside, America may seem to be a land of endless optimism and confidence, but could it be in danger of falling apart? An increasing number of Americans seem to think so, and they're preparing for the end. They call themselves preppers, mainstream suburban Americans hoarding supplies and weapons while leading otherwise perfectly normal lives. A former nuclear missile facility in the U.S. has now been turned into a high-tech refuge for people who fear the end of the world. It's a national phenomenon, and it's supporting a doom-boom industry worth many millions. It says it quotes a guy, Braxton Southwick from Salt Lake City, who believes the nice suburban neighborhood he lives in could soon be swept away by some kind of modern apocalypse. He's afraid of some impending catastrophe that will do something to American society. The trigger could be a terrorist attack, a monetary collapse, cataclysmic failure in power generation, or a natural disaster. Preppers fear what comes next and have no faith in either their government or human nature. At the other end of America, another family are preparing exactly the same way in Virginia. Jay Blevins hoards food and weapons and run a network of like-minded families. Let me just again put this into the description box again. It's a lot of information, a long article, but everything that they talk about being a trigger certainly applies to, say, the Book of Revelation and end time Bible prophecy. And if there's for the New World Order to rise, America has to completely collapse, or at least in its current form, so it's no longer a world superpower, but just part of the global government ran by the Antichrist. And certainly, we're always looking to be attacked as a terrorist attack, and we're getting threats all the time with that. Monetary collapse seems to be right around the corner. In fact, I think sometime in 2015 there will be complete collapse of the U.S. economy. Cataclysmic failure in the power generation. We've been hearing so much about one solar flare knocking out the power grid. Hacking into from China or North Korea or Iran or Russia, hacking into our power grid through our computer system, shutting it down, an EMP attack, natural disaster, big earthquakes. We're overdue for a big earthquake on the West Coast. We're certainly overdue for a big earthquake at the New Madrid Fault in around Missouri. And if we part the land of Israel, let's go to Joel chapter 2. Joel chapter 3, verse 2 says, I will gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. When this two-state solution finally happens and we part the land of Israel, a lot of people have had dreams and visions saying that they see America being parted right through the center of the country, right through where the Mississippi River is, due to a massive earthquake on the New Madrid Fault line. So people sense through the bad economy, through all the unrest around the nation, the protests, the violence, that just seems to be getting worse and worse. People sense that something big is going to happen. And like I said earlier, I think 2015 is going to be a huge year for fulfilled Bible prophecy, moving us closer and closer to Daniel's 70th week. Let's move on. I'm going to touch on this one too. This is an interesting article out of Prophecy News Watch as well. Things to come, 2015 in Bible prophecy. If you don't know a lot about Bible prophecy, this is a really good article. It's extremely long, and it's just got a lot of good information about prophecy, but I'm going to just touch on the first part of it. It says, given that the United States, or any semblance thereof, is not mentioned in Bible prophecy, one has to take into account the how, why, and so what of that particular implication. Well, I just talked about it a second ago. The United States could be completely destroyed prior to the New World Order, or it can certainly be marginalized to a point that it is no longer really a factor, or it could just be included in the nations of the New World Order. But it says, if the U.S. is not here, who then fills that vacuum? Who sets the precedence for a global order? What is the reserve currency the whole world leans upon for stability in global markets? Logic and history tells us that if the U.S. isn't filling that role, someone will. How and when does the world get from current status quo to the one in which it isn't? Again, I've referenced this several videos that David Petraeus, former General David Petraeus, is a member of the Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign Relations, recently said, what comes after America? North America. And he came right out and said that America as we know it is about to be no longer. There will be no longer just the United States of America. That we're going to be joined with Mexico and Canada and become the North American region. The Club of Rome has the world divided into a 10-region division around the globe, and the first region is the North American region: Mexico, United States, Canada. 10 regions. Very, very interesting, because there's a beast in Revelation, 7 heads with 10 horns, and the 10 horns are 10 kings. There's going to be a 10-kingdom region of the world. The divisions are already there, and David Petraeus said that shortly America is going to collapse and become part of the North American region. The new world order is going to rise. So it is with this outline of Bible prophecy, he says, I am 100% certain. It's when we get to the subsections of the outline that my certainty drops to between 60 to 75%. I'm certain on the order of things, not so certain on the specific of how those things come to pass. Here is the order. The imminent rapture of the church, number 1. Then the 70th week of Daniel, number 2. Then the second coming at the end of the 7 years. Then the millennium for 1,000 years, and then the eternal state. And then he talks about some other things within that, the subsections. The utter destruction of Damascus, Isaiah 17:1. We certainly see that could happen soon, the way things are going with Syria and ISIS. The temporary desolation of Egypt from Isaiah 19. The Gog and Magog war of Ezekiel. I talked about that already a little bit today. It's coming together. We're seeing Iran, Russia, Turkey forming an alliance. And of course the signing of a peace covenant, Daniel 9:27, and then Revelation 6:1 and 2, where the Antichrist rides the first of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It says, so where on God's timeline are we? Seems to be the recurring question that often gets asked. It says the United States is in an increasingly rapid state of decline in all 3 areas: spiritually, culturally, and economically. The U.S. economic decline is weakening the effect on the U.S. military and our ability to project our force as a strong image around the world. Paganism and secular humanism and the normalization of aberrant sexual, cultural lifestyles and belief systems appear to be filling the void of a declining Christian world culture. Wow, there's just so much going on in this article. I'm going to just leave it at that, but just say that without a doubt, the book of Revelation is about to unfold. And this article says the same thing I've been saying, that 2015 is going to be a very big year for it. Let me touch on, geez, there's a lot of articles here. Let me touch on a few more real quick. This is, I believe, out of the Times of Israel as well, maybe a Retsheva. Netanyahu, if Livni elected, this is actually out of Jerusalem Post, if Livni elected, Jews will need armored personnel to reach the Western Wall. Zippy Livni, recently fired by Benjamin Netanyahu, but she's been heavily involved in the peace negotiations, is now running in the election to become Prime Minister of Israel. Prime Minister chides Livni and Herzog for being willing to give the Palestinians a capital in Jerusalem. I just read Joel 3:2 about parting the land. The two-state solution, the covenant with many. And Herzog and Livni seem to be very willing to give up land for so-called peace. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu chided Zippy Livni for claiming earlier this week that the Western Wall would remain forever in Israel's hands, hinting that under her plans, Jews would need armored personnel carriers to reach the site. Speaking at the International Bible Contest for Adults in Jerusalem, that's cool, Netanyahu said the spirit of the Maccabees is what brought the Jews back to Israel, allowed them to build and defend the land, and give us great strength to stand up against all challenges and rebuff all pressure. Netanyahu alluded to Livni and Labour Party Chairman Isaac Herzog, who went to the Western Wall together on Sunday and vowed that it would remain under Israeli sovereignty forever, saying they were willing to give the Palestinians a capital in Jerusalem. I have heard someone say the wall will stay in our hands, he said. I want to ask you, how exactly will the wall remain in our hands as an enclave inside Palestinian territory? Said Netanyahu. How exactly will we get to it? In convoys, by helicopter, perhaps in armored personnel carriers? We did not return to the Kotel after 2,000 years in order to reach it by armored personnel carriers. On this day I say to you here, on the last night of Hanukkah, that the Kotel will stay in our hands, and Jerusalem in its entirety will remain in our hands forever under Israeli sovereignty. Which is amazing, because 65% of the Israeli people do not want Benjamin Netanyahu to remain in power. They look at him as holding up peace, and he's actually just trying to maintain the land that God gave them and to protect Israel's best interests. But Israel's going to sign this peace agreement, and it's going to lead to a lot of destruction and war. And like I said at the beginning of this video, that's just where we're at in time now. So it looks like he's probably not going to get reelected. There's going to be a new government, and that may speed the process along. Speaking of Jerusalem and dividing Jerusalem, there's another article. Hang on. Lapid, Jerusalem will not be divided no matter what happens with the Palestinians. This is out of the Jerusalem Post. So you can see the two sides. Netanyahu and Lapid are saying we will not divide Jerusalem, but you've got Livni and Herzog saying that they will divide Jerusalem and give it to a Palestinian state. Lapid slams Netanyahu's policies after the Gaza war. We will not divide Jerusalem. Lapid vowed Saturday, no matter what happens diplomatically with the Palestinians. He said Israel could reach an agreement with the Palestinians without dividing the capital, noting that countries do not negotiate over their capitals, and if this issue breaks down a final agreement, so be it. He said survival is all Netanyahu is concerned about, charged Lapid, a policy that came at the expense of Israeli public and called into question the premier's ability to govern. His criticism spared no side of the political spectrum, with blame being leveled at the left for announcing in advance its concessions, and at the right wing for not really wanting peace. So here's the important thing about this article. It says, echoing comments made in the past by others in the political echelon, Lapid said the Palestinians will never agree to an arrangement with them alone, which meant turning to the broader Arab world was necessary. We must start regional negotiations through the Arab League, he said. Turning to domestic politics next, the former prime minister said he was not willing to rule out any party for the makeup of a future coalition, but was rather focusing his efforts on unseating the current prime minister, and will do anything to make sure that happens. But let's go to Daniel 9:27 real quick, because he just talked about how the Palestinians alone will never agree to an arrangement, and that we have to turn to a broader Arab world as necessary, and we must start regional negotiations through the Arab League. Now, even Benjamin Netanyahu said recently that he would be willing to restart negotiations with the Arab League based on the Arab Initiative with 57 Muslim states. Daniel 9:27 again says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. That he is the Antichrist, and it says it's going to be a covenant with many, and that's what they're talking about here. A covenant with all of the Arab League, with the 57 Muslim states. Obviously the European Union and the United States would also be involved in that. Oh boy. Two more real quick. Report, Nasrallah is pushing for Hamas reconciliation with Syria and Iran. This is our Jerusalem Post again. Waiting for that to load. I'm going to go to Isaiah 17:1. Isaiah 17:1, the burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. We're looking now at Hamas, pushing for Hamas reconciliation with Syria and Iran. This war, the Syrian civil war, and the possible overthrow of Bashar al-Assad certainly looks like it's going to lead to the fulfillment of Isaiah 17:1. Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, is reportedly mediating between Hamas on the one hand and Iran and Syria on the other in order to patch up the alliance that has been damaged due to the war in Syria. According to a senior official, Nasrallah is playing a key role in the mediation effort, which is being encouraged by Tehran, that is planning to invite Hamas bureau chief Mashal to the Iranian capital. Possible signs of the mediation can be seen from Gaza, which, by the way, Iran, during the Gaza war in the summertime, is the one that was supplying Hamas with all of the weapons. Hamas also urged Hezbollah to withdraw its forces from Syria, where they are battling for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and focus on fighting Israel instead. Iran is Syria and Hezbollah's strongest regional ally. The Islamist group, which controls the Gaza Strip, was once an Assad ally, but in 2012 it endorsed a revolt against him in a shift that at the time deprived the Syrian leader of an important Sunni Muslim supporter in the Arab world. You can see how crazy this is. But again, let's turn to Psalm 83 real quick, and let me read that paragraph again. It says, Hamas urged Hezbollah to withdraw its forces from Syria while they are battling for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and focus on fighting Israel instead. That's interesting because they keep saying they want a two-state solution and they want peace in the Middle East. Yet they keep talking about fighting Israel. And this would be a new alignment of Muslim nations forming again, and terrorist groups to attack Israel. In Psalm 83, start at verse 2. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. They have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. That's exactly basically what's happening in this paragraph I just read. Hamas urges Hezbollah to join forces with Syria and focus on fighting Israel instead of each other. Things are moving really, really fast. One more article, just touch on it real quick. This is about ISIS. Islamic State fighters are moving closer to Israel. This is all the Jerusalem Post. Now, it's interesting enough, this also mentions Damascus. And again, Isaiah 17:1, Damascus is going to be destroyed. It says, despite setbacks on some fronts, Islamic State continues its advance southward in Syria, which is moving them toward Damascus, and a move toward the Jordanian and Israeli borders. ISIS has suffered severe losses as a result of coalition airstrikes in the last months. Over 1,000 of its fighters have been killed, and Kurdish Peshmerga forces have driven the jihadists back on a wide front between Erbil and Mosul. It says, yet despite these setbacks, there are no indications that ISIS is anywhere close to collapse, and while American bombers and Kurdish fighters are preventing its advance further east, there are many indications that jihadists are continuing to advance their presence in the south and westerly direction, from the borders of their entity towards Damascus and Lebanon, and incidentally in the direction of Israel. A largely hidden contest is underway in the Dara province in southern Syria between the ISIS and the rival jihadists of Jabhat al-Nusra. And the Islamic State is now seeking to establish a foothold in this area. So they're moving toward Damascus, they're moving toward Israel. Isaiah 17:1 says Damascus is going to be a ruinous heap, no longer be a city. Psalm 83 says that this conglomeration of Muslim nations is going to move against Israel and basically to try to wipe them off the map, that the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. We can see it all coming together. That was, I believe, 12 news stories I touched on today. And I had to cut news stories out because this is a 45-minute video. There's so much going on. So what does all of this mean? It means that we are living in the last days. We are running out of time. If you are saved, it's exciting times to be living in when you see Bible prophecy taking place right before your very eyes. If you are not saved, it means it is time to make sure you get that done while you still can. Jesus Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. Romans 6:23 says the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. Not through Allah, Muhammad can't help you, Buddha, the Hindu, it's all false. There's one truth, Jesus Christ. And He will save you. The Bible says all who call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. And there is no other name given under heaven to man whereby we must be saved. But you're running out of time. Call upon Jesus in faith and repentance. He will save you. And then all this news that we're seeing won't scare you anymore. It's actually just exciting to see the Word of God coming to life every day in the news. But all the signs are here. Time is short. Keep looking up. God bless everyone.